Hi, my name is Catherine Wheeler, and today I'm going to be discussing the topics of revisionism for my reading ladder for my young adult literature class at Oklahoma State University as my final project. The big topic that we will be discussing on revisionism is how does revisionism relate to our everyday lives? Renowned author Cynthia Leddich Smith, author of Story Hearts Unbroken, writes a story that focuses on deep issues of racial roots within a predominantly white middle-class town in Kansas. This story displays how racial bias and injustice can hide underneath the surface of what seems to be a nice town. The revisionism concept within the text is focused around the play Wizard of Oz. Not only does this story have historical life lessons about race and represents the topic of revisionism, this story is vital to the lessons of revisionism because it has key parts within the book that have relation to students' life experiences, as well as the lesson being predominantly based around the book. Hearts Unbroken gives students multiple age-appropriate connections to their everyday lives by appealing to their teen relationships, school functions, and the hard topics of bullying and inclusion. Within the story, Hearts Unbroken, there is reference to the historical background of the author of The Wizard of Oz. L. Frank Baum was apparently a known racist and spoke openly in supporting the removal of the Native Americans. Jimmy Lee Beeson, a professor of Indigenous and Indian American Studies and author of the Wonderful Races of Oz article, gives historical context on the author as a Native American himself as a member of the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. This is an important aspect of the lesson because it gives students history behind the author of the focus play that is presented within the article and the book. How the play Wizard of Oz is a topic of revisionism itself within the story. Within this lesson, I wanted to focus firstly on the book itself, Hearts Unbroken, to help the students get involved or begin to get involved within the topic of revisionism, and then to get some historical context behind the Wizard of Oz and the author within the play that is in the book. But I also wanted to get historical video context because certain age groups do better if they have more intellectual interaction. By doing this, I wanted to insert the Age of Jackson Crash Course by John Green. Renowned author and YouTube content creator John Green, who has a bachelor's in English and Religious Studies, gives accurate historical context as a white man in a YouTube video within the subject of the Indian Removal Act, which is what is represented in front of you. And the topic of reservations, which is discussed within the book of Hearts Unbroken. It is important for students to have historical context from all topics of the book in order to understand the concept of revisionism. This specific YouTube video will be played after the reading and discussion of the book Hearts Unbroken and the article The Wonderful Races of Oz. In continuing on the subject of revisionism, racial bias, and Native American misunderstandings, I wanted to include, even though he is a Canadian writer and broadcast presenter, he has a very powerful poem that is spoken verbally on a YouTube video. Thomas King, Canadian writer and broadcast presenter, bases his poem upon Native American issues, stating and demonstrating Native Americans are not the Indians you had in mind. This would be a good poem for students to analyze and make connections with within the book Hearts Unbroken, as well as the literal display of revisionism within the poem. This poem represents modern-day issues of Native American culture and the biases against them. Students will have discussions on both John Green's video and the poem's video in a single class session. This website is, and I placed the QR code. If you have a smartphone, you can scan that and it'll take you directly to Cynthia Lettich Smith's author's website. This website is the webpage of the author who wrote Hearts Unbroken, Cynthia Lettich Smith. The author is a New York Times best-selling author of fictional children and adult stories. She is also a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation and centers her stories around modern-day Native American issues. This is a useful add-on to the lesson because it gives some background to the students about the author who wrote the book that is being focused on. Also, it gives students the opportunities to take a look at her other books that they might be interested in. In continuing on the subject of revisionism, The Wizard of Oz, and Cynthia Lettich Smith's Hearts Unbroken, I wanted to include a real-life display of what takes place within the book. Harlem Repertory Theater gives a real-life representation of the revisionist concept within the story Hearts Unbroken. The concept of having a mixed-race cast for a previously predominantly white cast in a play, not to mention that this play is a live demonstration of The Wizard of Oz. This is highly relevant in order to grasp the main concept of revisionism and how it relates to the real world. Revisionism is based on changing what history could not in the past and how we can implement change in our everyday lives. Lastly, I wanted to end the lesson of this series with the song Over the Rainbow by Mario Nicola Messino. This is in relation to revisionism and the book and The Wizard of Oz. This is important to the lesson because even though the story is based on Native American racial injustices and bullying, every individual person has a story to tell, a message to share. This song is the representation to be yourself, and just because something that may originate from a bad place does not mean you can't turn it into something beautiful. And that is the true concept of revisionism.